yesterday with his eyes closed. Like that's kind of who he is. Like there are no smoke and mirrors when it comes to throwing the football with Spencer Rattler. Like you talk about arm talent, it's a cliche, but basically, what that means is you can go out there and let it rip, and you're going to put the ball 9 times out of 10, probably more, where you want it to be. And I think Spencer was very comfortable. He was in command, which is something we talked about with Dow Loggins, and he's out there with his guys. And so, but by the way, I didn't realize this at the time when we were talking live on the air, but I said, there's generally one coach, sometimes it's from an NFL team, who kind of runs the drill. For Spencer, that was actually his private quarterback coach from Arizona that was out there running through the drills for him. So it's someone he is completely, entirely comfortable with. They've probably gone through that exact script probably countless times, just getting work on air, back at home. So this is something where, again, he looked calm, he looked comfortable, throwing the ball well, but that's what you expect from Spencer Rattler, and that's what the NFL teams expect too. I really also like the point from Dow Loggins. He did not throw the other top quarterbacks under the bus, rightfully so. He's a college coach, but he did make a point when we asked him to point out, like, hey, Spencer Rattler, he threw at the NFL Combine, and he ran at the NFL Combine. And there were discussions about, hey, does Spencer even need to run? We know he's not going to put down a great 40-yard dash. And the thought process behind that with Dow Loggins, with Spencer's people, his agent, coaches, family, was, hey, we're here to compete. And we're not going to avoid competing because we're going to run a 4.9 instead of a 4.75. We're just going to go compete at everything. And I believe Dow Loggins said, we'll compete in a Target parking lot, which was great press for Target. But also, I love the point there. It's like, if you're going to present that you're a competitor and you're that guy, you're that dude, don't avoid throwing in front of scouts at the Combine. And so Rattler didn't avoid any of that, which I love. It probably doesn't hurt Caleb Williams, Drake May, but still, if I'm making a guy a multimillionaire in the face of my franchise, I want you to go throw in front of the scouts.
Yeah. Like, what do you have to hide, Exactly. And that's what, talking about Jim Nagy, he actually kind of pseudo called out a prospect on Twitter recently. I can't remember who it was, but they asked him, hey, why are you working out at it was either Pro Day or the Combine, and he was like, I never missed an opportunity to compete. And Jim Nagy's like, basically said, well, you turned down the Senior Bowl, So, and for Spencer, for him, you've probably got nowhere to go but up, right? Because when you've got the level of talent he does, you're going to perform well in these settings anyway, generally. And he's a guy that's trying to continue to raise his stock, right? So here's a question. We'll get y'all's take on this. Remember we visited this question previously, but now we've got the Combine and Pro Day over. Who do we have going first, Rattler or Leggett in the draft? Not literally first.
I mean, I think it's still Leggett.
I think it's still Leggett.
Yeah, that's what I've got too.
I saw, and again, at this point, you can't. I've learned this over the years. I used to maybe think you could predict where a guy's going to go, or within some level of accuracy. Oh, it's going to be one of these 5 teams. You really can't. I've had family members of players in the past be like, hey, our agents are telling us these are the most 5 likely teams, the next 5 are the next most likely, and it ended up being literally a team that wasn't even on the list.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this was years ago, I had a former player, parent tell me, hey, I think we're going right here. No, it was like rounds later. So I think it's very difficult to predict those things, but I did see, for one, the Panthers had quite a bit of representation there yesterday. And then, again, this is just media, TV coverage stuff. Doesn't really mean a ton, but there was some talk about, hey, the Panthers have 2 picks early in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at possibly taking a wide receiver. Hey, this Leggett guy who played his college career an hour down the road, that could be a good fit. So I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but you could certainly see that being the case. And I think could Leggett sneak into the late first round? It's certainly possible. But I do sort of think that early second feels like the sweet spot for him. I can't see him going much later than that, though, because, I mean, Tyler, you saw him up close again yesterday, man. I mean, he is just a physical freak. And I think being around him for a while and seeing how much he's grown since he was a freshman at South Carolina, he just looked calm and in command as well. He was grinning the entire time. His interview with the media, I felt like, was a little bit more open and polished for a guy who generally is a little bit more shy. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying, if you watch his press conferences, he typically is a man of few words. I felt like he gave us a little bit more in that. So only stock up for him, but I do think late first, early second, it feels like that's his range.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll continue to react to Pro Day, get some sound coming away from yesterday, as well as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls on this Wednesday here on The Game.
Well, while I was gone, guys, you know what I missed? Firehouse Subs for lunch. They honestly did not have one where I was at, but they do right here in the Midlands. In fact, they've got 14 different Firehouse Subs locations, all owned and operated by our good friend Larry Chandler. Shout out to Larry. Appreciate you. He was fired up about basketball this past weekend. There's actually a special going on right now at Firehouse Subs, and it's exclusive to ordering online or through the Firehouse Subs app. Best way to order anyway. You can use the Rapid Rescue by downloading the Firehouse Subs app or going to firehousesubs.com, finding the location nearest you and ordering. Here's the special. For 2 more days, today and tomorrow only, Wednesday and Thursday, a $5 medium meatball sub. That's right, $5 for a medium meatball sub. You can get it at firehousesubs.com or by downloading the Firehouse Subs app. You can get it hot and ready for you as soon as you walk in. Avoid the wait. firehousesubs.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you on this Wednesday morning. Quick reminder about the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, $25 gets added to the pot until a Gamecocks hitter hits a Grand Slam. When that does happen, you could be the lucky recipient of all that money. Just go online to 1075thegame.com each and every week and register for your chance to win $450 currently in the pot as the Gamecocks head into SEC play this weekend, taking on Ole Miss. Continuing our conversation about Pro Day yesterday, Beamer was on with Jay and Elijah on the postgame show yesterday afternoon, kind of recapping everything that went on at Pro Day, and kind of started off by speaking to the importance of what this kind of day does for players.
It's kind of a culmination of what they wanted to get out of their college experience. Whether it be a guy that has been at Carolina since before I got here, like the Carry-On Joyner who performed today in front of the scouts, or somebody that I've known since high school that transferred in, like Spencer Rattler, or someone like Nick Gargiulo that was at Yale and then just came in for one season. But all those guys participated today, and it was what they wanted when they went to college, to earn a degree and then have the opportunity to go play football at the next level. And those guys have earned their degrees, and now they get the opportunity to perform in front of scouts and have an opportunity to go play football professionally pretty soon. So that's pretty cool, just to be able to watch those guys do that and live out their dreams, and then really just being able to catch up with them. For a lot of those guys, it's the first time I've seen them since November or December. And it was great having them back in the building and being around, and it was fun watching them today.
And obviously the primary focus is on guys like Rattler and like that, and even some of the guys like Arjulo and Dial, that also, Trey Knox as well, that also got invited to the NFL Combine. But we saw so many guys. We talked to Jabari Ellis yesterday, a former Gamecock that was coming back to work out to hopefully get an opportunity and have another shot at the NFL. So a pro day, especially when you have a guy like Rattler or Leggett that's getting a lot of attention from all over the league, opens up the possibilities for so many more of these guys to get more eyes on them. We saw Miriam Brown put up good times. We saw Dante Miller go out there and have the best 40 out of anybody. Like, it really opens up the door. Not say these guys are suddenly going to get drafted in the 4th or 5th round, but this might be the opportunity for them to get a camp invite, maybe be an undrafted free agent. Like, it really opens up doors for these guys to have opportunities at the next level as well.
Well, how many times are you watching an NFL game and they go to the little graphic and they're like, hey, this guy was a 7th round pick, didn't have a ton of production in college, or is from a small college, or was buried on the depth chart, or was injured a lot in college, and then they find the right team in the NFL, they find a role, and then they just find a way to stick. And so it's incredibly difficult, even covering it hyper locally the way we do. It's very difficult to predict which guys are going to be that guy, but somebody from this group, 9 times out of 10, somebody from this group will go into the league and find a way to stick that maybe wasn't expected to do so. And I think that's what's exciting for these guys. They all go out there, are frankly the odds against some of them. Yes, that's the fact of the matter. That's the NFL, it's one of the most difficult jobs you could possibly try to get. Like, the percentages are against you, but somebody out of this group will find a way. And, I think for South Carolina, yeah, you talk about Rattler, you talk about Leggett, but there's some other guys. I mean, think about Demir Bird. He had, he had like a solid college career. Mm-hmm. Actually made some big play. Probably doesn't get talked about enough, the number of just deep balls that they hit him on that kind of changed games, I thought. But for the most part, he didn't have like a Bruce Ellington even, or a Kenny McKinley type career at South Carolina. But because of his speed, his ability to get open, his ability to make things happen on special teams, he stuck in the NFL for a number of years. So I look at a guy like Amarian Brown, and Amarian Brown ran a 1.49.10, a 4.31 shuttle, and a 4.31 40, and was upset with his 40 time. So if you can run, and by the way, had a 35-inch vertical as well, which speaks to explosiveness. If you can do that, teams will give you a shot. Now, it's up to you to stay. It's up to you to stick. But teams will give you a shot. And so there's some guys on this list that maybe we don't talk about as much, but some NFL scout yesterday pulled out their little trusty notebook and circled a couple of these names and said, let's get this guy in camp as an undrafted free agent, or let's potentially spend our last pick on this guy.
Well, and this is going to sound a little bit backwards, but there's actually a lot of data that being an undrafted free agent in a lot of cases is better than being picked in the 7th round. You know, one of them, the obvious one, is typically if you're kind of this priority undrafted free agent, you got the ability to pick. You know, I mean, if you're drafted, unless you're Eli Manning or somebody like that, you don't get to pick where you go. You know, you get drafted, you're happy to, you know, everybody wants to hear their name called.
Sure.
But, you know, you have an agent, you got probably multiple teams coming after you, get to pick, you know, what's the best fit for me in terms of how they're going to use me, the depth chart situation. You know, the spots are even more limited in the league. But also the money. You know, ESPN had a story last year, and I don't think there's been any changes to the structure, but a lot of teams in the league, because of how the rules are, they can actually allocate more guaranteed money to undrafted free agents than they can for a slot, say, in the 7th round. And so for some guys, you know, even if it's a Nick Gargiulo, Trey Knox, or a guy like AB who, you know, probably not going to get drafted, but is certainly going to have an opportunity to sign a free agent deal, tryouts, things like that, it can be more financially beneficial, you know, to go not even late in the draft, but to go completely undrafted. And it's actually, I didn't even realize this same story I'm looking at right now from last fall of ESPN. A third of the players in the league got to the league via undrafted free agency.
Yeah. Yeah, you just truly never know. And again, while these scouts are primarily going to these pro days to see the guys they're expected to take in the higher rounds or just in the draft in general, they're all looking for that diamond in the rough. They all want to be able to say, hey, I found this guy at X Pro Day, and, you know, he only had 10 catches in career, or somebody that was buried on the depth chart, but we saw X, Y, and Z out of him from this drill or from this, you know, performance at whatever the pro day, the combine, whatever it may be. And, you know, we ended up taking him. He ended up turning into the superstar. So everybody's always on the lookout for those kind of guys. And we're not sitting here saying that AB or Dante Miller or anybody like that specifically going to be one of those guys, but they opened up the door and did a good job of performing well yesterday to at least have that possibility to be on the table for them.
Well, and speaking of what Chris is talking about, like you have 53 men on your active roster. Those are not the 53 best players you can get. Like, there is a money ball aspect to this as well. You have to try to build the best roster you can within the confines of your salary cap and separating out the money the best you can. So you can find, if you can find great value, that is how you build out your depth. That is how you have a team that doesn't fall off completely if one of their best players is injured or has to miss a lot of time. So it is very important to find guys who maybe are not the best players in the league, but can go out there and perform when called upon. And you know what? There are some guys. So obviously, again, don't take this to mean like, oh, this guy's moving up the board and is going to be drafted in the 3rd round. But there are some guys fans may not think about who there's been some buzz about how they performed yesterday. The two I have heard the most about as far as under the radar guys for South Carolina would be, like you said, Tyler, Dante Miller. Not only did he run a 4.27, but he put up the bench 28 times as a 5'8", 190-pounder. So, you know, the kid is fast and strong. I think he would have helped this South Carolina team this past year when you look at their running back situation. I think he would have helped them if he had been able to get that extra year from the NCAA. And so Dante Miller, maybe a special teams flyer you take on him if you're a team. And then I look at Tyreek Johnson, who has always quietly been actually one of South Carolina's strongest, best athletes on their defensive front. He benched it 33 times, had a 35-inch vertical, and ran a 4.70 40 at nearly 6'4", 283 pounds. So this is a guy who didn't have a incredibly productive career at South Carolina, was injured a lot, that held him back. But don't be surprised if teams take a flyer on both these guys. And you know who else has actually got invited to the combine, but we haven't talked as much about, would be Nick G.
Mm-hmm.
there's a great, I was talking to Will Helms, there's a great sort of offensive line profile there in that you've got a guy who played in the Ivy League, obviously is a leader, very, very intelligent, now has SEC experience. He's 6'5 plus, 313 pounds, and ran a 4.63 shuttle. So there's some athleticism there as well. I think it's going to be fascinating to see which of these guys, other than kind of your big three or so, are able to stick.
Absolutely. We'll hear some more sound from players coming away from Pro Day as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, rolls along on your Wednesday here on The Game.
All right, guys, time for you to head on over to classicroofingsc.com where you can get more information on Classic Roofing and my friends over there who they want to offer you the best services you can possibly get as far as fixing your roof or even just letting you know how much time you may have left on your roof. That's going to be one of the biggest purchases you're ever going to make when it comes to your house, and you don't want to be caught unaware when you need a big roofing repair in the future. So go to classicroofingsc.com where you can set up a free estimate or give them a call right now, 803-590-7870. They're going to come out. They're going to let you know if there's anything on your roof that needs to be fixed right away, or they're also going to let you know, hey, this roof's got 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Go ahead and be prepared. Again, my friends Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer, they're both longtime residents here at the Palmetto State, and they have experience spanning more than 20 years. Their team of experts is committed to handle any and all of your roofing requirements, whether it's residential or commercial. Call them today, 590-7870.
guy. You know, a guy that's, you know, very knowledgeable within football, been in 3 different offenses, 2 different conferences, proven player, very accurate passer, fast learner, quick processor, guy that can create and extend and make others around him better, and mainly getting a leader. You know, a guy that's, you know, on time, you know, shows his work ethic and you know, puts it in every day. And, you know, that's what they're getting.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Westminster, Chris Clark, along with you, recapping everything that went on at Pro Day yesterday for South Carolina. That was Spencer Rattler talking to the media after he finished up his throwing session, just kind of explaining what he feels like NFL teams are going to get whenever they end up drafting him coming up here in a little over a month's time. And he brings up a really good point for a guy that's been at 2 different places, played under multiple offensive coordinators. He's somebody that has had to, given his circumstances, adapt and learn very quickly, which when you get to the NFL, that's exactly what they're going to be expecting you to do as well.
Well, you know, we talked to Dow Loggins about this as well. Any of these offensive guys that are drafted or even that just teams are talking to them, looking at them, they've now played in a pro-style scheme. And, you know, if you're Spencer Rattler, you can say, look, I played in the Lincoln Riley offense at Oklahoma, which you do see more and more elements from those college offenses at the NFL level. You've played in Marcus Satterfield's 200 words per play call offense here as well. And you've now played in Dow Loggins' offense too. So, you know, you've showed you can handle the things that maybe if I'm a quarterback, not that I can't make the progression to the NFL, but there is a little bit more of a jump just from the logistics of getting a play into your team when you go from a 1-word or 2-word or 3-word offense to, you know, and I joke about Satterfield, but a lot of these NFL play calls, at least traditionally, are very long, very involved. And I mean, I don't know that I have the mental capacity to, like, my short-term memory would struggle very much with these long play calls. So if you're Rattler, both from a concept standpoint, from a play call standpoint, that actually is incredibly helpful. And so I think that was big at the Senior Bowl. Once I saw they were running, I think it was the Patriots offense, and it was very involved. And Dow Loggins gave us the example of Sean Payton and Spencer Rattler kind of having some, you know, chalk talk. And Payton's like, oh, that's the exact same thing we call that concept or play. And it was because Loggins and Payton, I believe, had called it the same thing years ago. And so, you know, I think that's very helpful, not just for Rattler, really, honestly, for any of these offensive guys that they have played in a pro-style scheme, and maybe could be a tiebreaker for Rattler if teams are deciding between him and someone else.
Well, and I go back to how Spencer has, like, I think you make a great point. He's got 2 guys with NFL backgrounds that have some complexities and some pro elements, if not outright pro plays in the playbook the past couple years. And he's done what he's done over, you know, through difficult circumstances. You know, there were parts of 2022 that went extremely well. There were parts, the Florida game, you know, where they came out and had, 25, 30 personnel groups. That game obviously went very poorly. But Spencer Rattler has found ways to thrive at South Carolina in oftentimes less than ideal circumstances. And so when teams are looking at investing, you know, let's say Spencer Rattler goes in the 4th round or 5th round, you know, that's not the same investment as a first-round pick, but it is an investment. You see guys getting traded who are really good players for 4th or 5th-round picks. You're still talking about potentially investing, you know, significant money in a guy when you're drafting him even in the mid-round, day 3 range. And so they're going to want to be comfortable not just with the talent, but also with, can he handle things mentally? So, yes, we've seen he's demonstrated that. He can handle those things mentally. And then how do they perform under pressure? How do they perform? You know, sometimes you get drafted to a team that's not very good. You know, how can you thrive in those scenarios? And so Spencer Rattler, one of the reasons his stock has gone up, you know, considerably since 2022 is because he showed he could do that.
And again, when you're looking at somebody that's potentially going to be drafted around that third round, you're likely going to at least go in to whatever situation, likely being maybe the number 2 guy. And I brought this point up plenty of times before. This past season, we've saw more quarterbacks start in a single NFL year than any other time in history. So now your backup quarterback, you look at that more importantly than ever, because based on law of averages, at some point during the season, there's a very good chance he could get 1 or 2 starts, whether they be by injury or just your starter not playing well. And again, a guy like Spencer Rattler, they can get up to speed very quickly, is somebody you probably feel comfortably, if you needed to, turning the reins over to him, in the middle of the season if you had to.
Yeah, and I think at some point, all this stuff, if you're a player, man, it's out of your hands. And I don't want to say the single biggest thing, but one of the biggest, I would say, factors in whether or not you're going to be successful at the next level, unfortunately, is what team do you end up on? Is it a franchise that is well run? Is it a franchise that has basically an idea of exactly what they want to be, and what they want to be can be successful in terms of picking who's around you? And so I see Tyler back there smiling. I think he's probably thinking about how bad his Falcons are. But I think if you find the right spot, if you're Spencer Rattler, let's say it is a well-run franchise, and they do have a quarterback that is already sort of situated as a starter. To me, that may be the best situation, because you are at some point, like you said, going to get that opportunity. And if you can play, they're going to find you in this league. And if you can play, all of a sudden you become trade bait, which you're going to get traded to somewhere that does need a starter, I think.
You brought up a really good point earlier about the possibility of Xavier Legette potentially becoming a Carolina Panther, an organization that is not been run great under this ownership of David Tepper. As exciting as it would be, and I'm asking this because you are a fan, as exciting as it would be to see him go there, would you also be worried that they would not utilize him correctly?
Absolutely. I have no faith whatsoever that the Panthers will use anybody effectively
You
right
have a new
now.
coaching staff, though, at least.
For a year.
Maybe not even the full year.
True.
I mean, Chris, you're a Panthers fan too.
Yeah.
Would you have any? I mean, I think it would be a good fit for Legette in that it is local. You'd still have your support in place. Wouldn't be a hard transition as far as like all the stuff we never think about. Like you are coming from a small town.
Sure.
And I think sometimes for receivers, especially those who play in the Southeast, weather can be a factor as well. So you wouldn't have to deal with, being in the snow every other game, or it being 15 degrees. Obviously, you're going to play in some of those stadiums, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
And so I could think of much worse fits, but I think you're in a situation with the Panthers where I still have very big questions about, hey, is Bryce Young the answer at quarterback? So do they need a wide – like, would it be a good situation in terms of playing time, like in terms of need at his position? Yes, 100%. Would it be one where you get all the warm, fuzzy feelings that, you're going to be developed there 100%, it's going to be a great situation? Of course not.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely kind of falls in line with exactly what they're looking for, and potentially could be their highest pick in the draft because they don't have a first-round pick, because, Adam Thielen was the number one guy this past year, and he's a guy that's certainly, past his prime level of production. So it would make sense if the Panthers picked him up. Again, like you brought up the point, I don't know if it's going to give him the type of development or the exact career trajectory he necessarily wants, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. And you never know, right? That's why this stuff is so interesting to talk about. Is it could be a great spot on paper and it doesn't work out, or it can be one where you have a lot of questions and it does. I think that the key for Legette, regardless of where it is for him to just get comfortable and then stay confident. Like I still maintain the biggest difference between him this past year and sort of, the end of that year before, where he springboarded into this past season, was just complete confidence in himself. I think you saw the confidence wane a little bit early in his career. If he had a drop or two, he was a different guy, I think, mentally on the field. So going to the next level, just continuing to know, hey, I belong here. Like, I'm a top pick for a reason. If he does that, I think he's got a chance to be successful regardless, because clearly he has all the things you're looking for if you're an NFL team.
And Tyler, you mentioned the buzz around the Carolina Panthers with Legette. Jordan Reed, ESPN, he has Xavier Legette in his 2-round mock draft going to your Atlanta Falcons. Pick
Ooh.
number 43 in the second round.
Kirk Cousins to Xavier Legette. I'm intrigued.
That was interesting.
We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you for a few more minutes. We'll jump into baseball in just a second, but real quick, we are just a little over a week away from wall-to-wall college basketball. And if you need to upgrade your setup,
You better call
before
now.
it gets here, you better call now and get that job done.
I can give you the number, too. 803-948-8327. That's Michael and Nathan, our friends over at Integrated Media. You mentioned wall-to-wall. I mean, Tyler, you can literally, if you called and said, I need a TV wall, do it. They can do it for you.
What do y'all think? What do y'all think's the better setup? Taking like that extra room in the house and going full home theater, like the biggest screen possible, or going with the basically you see them on social media sometimes when people are just trying to flex their setup and it's like 9 TVs, like 3x3. What do you think is actually the preferred setup?
See, I feel like when you have all the TVs put together, the line in the middle bothers me a little bit.
Well, no, this is the people that are watching like all
you're
the
talking
games
about
at once.
all the games at once.
Like my man that does Phil Steele. He likes to brag. He's got 12 TVs set up or something.
I don't know. It's it's a little bit too distracting to me to watch all the games at once.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I feel like when people post that they're watching like 4 or 5 games at once on a football Saturday, it's just for the likes on social media. Like
It's fishing.
You're not taking in sufficient information
That's
by
right.
doing that. Two games is fine.
in fact, I feel like it's to the detriment of your top game that you're trying to watch. Like if you really want to watch the game, I think the perfect is one big screen and then maybe a side screen.
Okay.
Like maybe, but there's a clear line. Like this is game one that I'm watching. This isn't just
Top billing.
This is an alternative game. The most I'll do will be the main TV, a smaller TV, and then an iPad.
Well, and you may agree with Wes. You may disagree. But, you know, whatever kind of setup. You might say, I want 12 TVs, and I want all of them to play something different. Integrated Media can do that.
Absolutely.
IntegratedMediaInc.com, 803-948-8327.
Well, you're probably going to need some extra TVs this weekend because not only do we have the SEC men's tournament going on, and our guy Elijah Campbell will be checking in with us tomorrow morning from there. Also going to have college baseball, SEC college baseball. Finally, the Gamecocks hitting the road, take on an SEC opponent heading to Oxford this weekend. They wrapped up their full slate of non-conference play. Of course, they'll still have their midweeks as the season goes along, but last non-conference game before you start SEC play this upcoming weekend, 4-3 win last night, taking on Georgia State out in Augusta. A little closer than maybe you wanted it to be, but South Carolina's pitching once again stepped up. Garrett Gainey comes in, closes out the game with an incredible 2 innings with 5 strikeouts, and offense maybe could have gotten a little bit more out of that, but again, a win's a win, 14-3 as you head into conference play.
Yeah, I don't think you ever put too much stock in one game in baseball, and South Carolina got the win, so I don't think you can complain too much about it. I think yesterday, both good and bad for South Carolina. The good being that you won another tight game, and frankly, you look at the margin in the SEC. South Carolina, look at the 2 Clemson games, look at the game last night. South Carolina is going to be in a ton of games. I think Ray Tanner always called it in the balance. Like, these games are going to be in the balance. There's going to be a lot of 1- and 2-run finishes. And the difference in being 12-18 in SEC play and everybody being like, you stink, versus being 18-12 and everybody being like, you're a lock for the tournament, is how you perform in the balance of those games. So I think, guys, it was good to have another close game. This is a team in Georgia State. Credit to them. They didn't put South Carolina on. They were, I guess, 2 walks, 1 walk from their pitching staff. And so we've seen – I would have liked to see a team that went after South Carolina get beat up a little bit more as far as putting some runs across, frankly. But you did get your main – Mark Kingston said it. This was a close game. Every game counts. He pitched his main guys out of the bullpen, and it held up. So – that's a positive I take away. This team has pitched, and that was something that we wondered about.
How about Garrett Gainey, too? You remember there was a lot of, best word I can come up with, belly aching when South Carolina took him, because some of the numbers at Winthrop and Liberty weren't the greatest. But, man, I realized he was out there on the mound for the last pitch of the Clemson game, right? But he has a 1.42 ERA. He's appeared in 4 games. 6 innings pitched. He's literally given up 1 hit. It was that homer against Clemson. And then he struck out 10 batters to 2 walks. So he's been kind of a revelation, coming out of that bullpen.
Absolutely. And again, conference play starting this weekend on the road, taking on Ole Miss. We'll be out at Firehouse Subs for tomorrow's show from 9 to
All
noon.
day.
The campus location right down the street on Main Street. So come by and see us. Going to be out there from 9 until noon. Halftime show coming up next here on The Game with myself and Dimitri Ravenos here on The Game. All right, let's see. See ya. Yep. Hey, what's up? Good. About to jump over to the other side of the glass. Dave's in here. Okay.